Okay, can you believe it? It's the first Monday of the year 2021, and we're headed for the outer Ulster, you would call it. And Pat McGart, how are you, Pat?
I'm grand, Jude. How are you?
I'm
It's
extremely well.
it's what a bitingly cold east. Somebody described it as a raw one today, and by God, it is raw.
I gather you have another title or the same title confirmed on you over the holiday period. You wouldn't be
Right.
like Mrs. Thatcher and say, "We are a grandfather."
Oh, well, we are a grandfather. Yes, oh, yes, yes. Youngest son, he and his wife had another child, Molly Rose McGart.
That's
Uh,
lovely.
so
Oh,
I think that brings us up to five.
that's the same as myself. Very good,
Yeah.
very good.
Mm.
There's something very well. Maybe we'll come to that later, but there's something very deep about I think being a grandparent. You know,
It is, yeah.
no
Uh,
bother,
well,
no
I
bother
was,
for a start. That's the first thing. No
uh,
bother.
Uh,
Virtually.
well, we had to go. It's the only time we've been on somebody else's house. My son, because he had to go and get his wife, and something he needed somebody to look after the number one. So me and my wife ended up. But to see grandchildren, they are great fun. We had great fun even looking after the wee 3-year-old. He can be very funny, and he's great crack. So having grandchildren, you're right, Jude. The lovely thing about grandchildren is you've all the joy and none of the responsibility.
Unlike
Unlike
situation
parenthood.
for
Yeah.
Arlene Foster. Anyway, we'll come to that now. So that's the first item on our agenda today. Is now I didn't see the Mar show, but I gather that Arlene yesterday, the TV show on Sunday
Yeah.
morning. I didn't see it, but I gather you did, and that Arlene was on it.
Yeah, Jude, I was watching it and I thought, and I don't like being sort of hypercritical, but I thought, is she delusional? Jude, the DUP oppose, they were only, first of all, they're the only party in Northern Ireland to support Brexit all the way. They then voted against every deal that was brought back to Westminster. They've now got a border down the Irish Sea, and Ireland's trying to spin it that the nationalist parties were hoping for a no-deal Brexit. Like, in other words, hang someone else on the hook for the balls up that the DUP have made of us. Now, when you remember, Jude, that Mrs. Thatcher, or not Mrs. Thatcher, Mrs. May was about to sign a deal with the EU when she was pulled out of that signing meeting by the DUP, suggesting to them that they would bring down the government. Now they've got their border down the Irish Sea, and they don't. I think they're trying to spin it. There's nothing to do with us. Well, the reality is, Jude, you can look at it any way you want. But there's no border between North and South, but there is a border between Britain and Ireland. Now, how is that significantly aided unionism? I would love to know. But Arlene was trying to spin it that way yesterday.
Well, I think she's pinning her, from what I hear, I didn't see it, as I say, but from what I heard about that interview, she was sort of saying that in 4 years' time, they would vote on and effectively ditch, if possible, ditch
The protocol,
the protocol.
Yeah.
I think, she's found herself hoisted by her own petard, and the thorns of the border are really jagging into her now, because the one thing that she said wouldn't happen, that was the border in there, you see, is exactly the one thing that has happened. And, the fact of the matter is, too, that what is good economically for the North is bad constitutionally from the point of view of unionism. Because if the more you integrate economically, the more likely you are to integrate politically eventually.
Yeah.
And I was listening to John Campbell, that little guy, John Campbell, and
BBC. He's very good, actually.
Very talented guy, I think. Anyway, very clear. I like his clarity, because I don't know anything about economics, but I can always follow what he's saying.
Yeah.
He was saying that it'd be a strange thing that Northern Ireland would sell itself on the basis that it's the best of both worlds to investors. Say, come here, establish your business. We have you the best of both worlds. You can get access to the British market, access to the EU market. And then, by the way, in 4 years' time, we're going to, in his words, knock that on the head.
Yeah. Jude, when you think about it, the DUP were the only party that supported Brexit. And when you think now where they are now, with a border down the Irish Sea, that is some success story. But then to try and switch it around that other parties are responsible for all this, You sit down, you go, this is insane. By the way, the other thing, to follow on from your point about 4 years' time, a 4 years' time, will it not be the opposite would be true? That the call for Irish unity would be way up, not way down. When there's more integration, if Northern Ireland succeeds, in the sense that it's access to both Britain and the EU, the only region in the UK that has that, and things start to improve, do you seriously think they're going to be looking to move out of that? Far from it.
Yeah. Well, remember the Misha Barney used to have this thing about cake and eat it.
Yeah.
The Brits want the cake and eat it. I was thinking, that Arlene and company, they can't eat the economic cake they've got now without eating some of the constitutional raisins or constitutional seeds.
But Jude, remember I sent you a thing, I think a message, or the Amazon. Somebody was buying something on Amazon, and the cost now in Britain is something like, I think it was 64 quid, and if you get it now in Germany, it's 52 because of the new charges and the new whatever. And the other thing as well, people from Britain will have to join the non-EQs when they're going to Spain. You saw the absolute chaos at Dover prior to, and the other thing is, there's a grace period before all these things kick in, but they will kick in eventually. And the other thing is Jude, there's so much. For instance, fishing is only about 1% of the British economy. I think it might even be. I think it might be 0.5. The service industries, the financial services, 80% of our industry, and that hasn't even been dealt with. Wait until that kicks in, and then see how good all this sort of is. So let's see it all.
Well, the boats have come into, or the ships that have come into Dublin and into Larne, I think, have both places have had a degree of difficulty. They've been, I don't know, many have come in. I think they said Dublin, something like 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
And out of that, there was at least 2 that have really held up for hours because they just didn't.
And had the right papers.
And
Andrew Marr was on yesterday, and he said to what do you call him? Boris was on with him as well. And Andrew Marr said, this should be easy peasy for the exporters. And Andrew Marr pulled up 180. I think he says, Prime Minister, are you kidding? 180 pages of red tape. And he says, how can that be, and then basically he was saying, you're taking the piss here by saying this is no big deal. If you've suddenly got 180 pages of regulation and red tape to deal with, it's not easy peasy.
The irony of it all is that was the complaint that Britain had when they were in the EU. They said the EU was full of red tape, and that made doing business very hard. It's twice as bad.
It's insanity. But anyway, that's outworking.
I gather you say I didn't again read this, but I gather Archbishop Martin has wrapped the nationalists' knuckles about the way they've reacted to NI 100.
Yeah, Jude, I read it and I sort of went into disbelief. It was the way he actually said it. He said he accused nationalist politicians of did I write it down somewhere? That they lacked generosity, and he was very disappointed in their attitude and all the rest. And I thought, good God, if you want an example of the Catholic Church being out of touch, he said that he expected more generosity and all the rest of it. Now, maybe from a Catholic teaching perspective and all that, I can understand it. But hey, from a political point of view, and from any other perspective, which as comments were bordering on the ridiculous, it'd be like asking a Palestinian to celebrate the founding of Israel. It wasn't exactly a success story for them. Or whatever, you can use any other analogy or you want, but Jude, like what? My point, I think it was Conor Murphy. I agree with what he said. He says, "Look, I certainly won't be celebrating the founding of the Northern State, but I respect the rights of others to do so." And that's my position as well. I'm a unionist, and I have no animosity towards them. Please celebrate whatever you want, but Jesus, don't expect a nationalist. Like when you look at the poverty, the immigration, the discrimination, and the bigotry in places like West Belfast, the Bogside, the Cregan, when you're by far the poorest areas in Northern Ireland, the Northern States, for 50, 70 years were all nationalist areas, and the violence and the lack of opportunity. What under God would anybody in the nationalist community be celebrating?
I was trying to think of a parallel, and I was thinking that at its best, you could say it'd be like, say a guy had a shop down the road and you knew he'd been gypping you for the last 50
Yeah.
years,
Yeah.
and overcharging you and giving you
Yeah.
back the wrong change and everything else. And then he celebrates 50 years of being in business, and he's really pissed off that you won't come down and enjoy it.
I give him some more money. Aye. Yeah.
But let me come back to Bishop Martin. I see. I don't want to be too hard on the guy. I don't agree with him. That's the first thing. But
No.
if you take it from a strictly Christian point of view, I mean, the central Christian message is, love your enemies, do good to those that hate you, pray for those that calumniate, whatever it is. Certainly, I think unionism qualifies under all of those headings.
Yeah.
So we should be as Christians, really joining them and doing the thing that makes them happy. Maybe we're bad Christians, Pat. That's our problem.
Well, that's what it is. I think sometimes that mixture of Christianity and politics, it's like oil and water. It's all very well to be very Christian, but the political reality, doesn't actually, the two don't wash.
Well, I would be more impressed by Archbishop Martin's statement if, in fact, he had been regularly making statements about, say, British arms trade.
Yeah.
Or about American nuclear weapons, or or Palestine, as you say. So it's sort of just reserved for one or two people. It's the old story, selective indignation, selective condemnation. And I just think it's ridiculous. But anyway, I don't think you need to worry too much, because I don't think anybody is listening too much to what the Catholic Church has to say in politics.
No, they have a long track record of being on the wrong side of history.
Aye. Okay, well, that's particular. One last thing in that, Pat, you did mention to me, you thought that maybe Arlene's saying what they do in 4 years' time. You suggested maybe that you should be more worried about the possibility of a border poll in 4 years' time.
Jude, I think, the bigger point I was trying to make when we were chatting earlier on was, I think unionism is almost delusional. I really genuinely do. They seem to be... every commentator that I can see, and some of their politicians, people like Jim Allister, the union, they don't seem to think that a lot of nationalists are totally pissed off with what's going on. The arrogance that has been shown, the contempt, the disdain, that has been shown to nationalism in recent times. 56% of the people here voted against Brexit. Their views were absolutely ignored. In fact, when the DUP were in their pomp, because they had the Conservative Party by the short and curlies, they made no attempt to reach out to sort of explain anything to our aid nationalism whatsoever. And they came back with this crap. We got 1 billion extra for something or other. Like, I know most of it was spent in Belfast. I think 495 million was spent right away in Belfast. How much did Derry get? Nothing. So, that's all rubbish. But what they were basically saying, Jude, as far as I could figure out, they seem to be unaware that there's churn going on in the nationalist community, that things are changing, the demographics are changing, that a lot of people here are no longer that sort of buying into that old unionism and so on. And there's a confidence. And Jude, I think they really need to wake up to the fact, and that's sort of arrogantly dismissing the views of the nationalist community. It's not what they should buy a couple of copies of Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, because by Jesus, they certainly do not go about it the right way.
But just a yes or no. Do you think in 4 years' time that the notion of a border poll will be in the headlines?
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. Well, it's a topic we'll come back to for sure. Let's move across the Atlantic, Pat. Let's go on a trip, mental, of course, because we can't go physically, and look at Mr. Trump.
Yes, what a man.
Found out last evening. I was watching CNN, and they were going nuts about it and saying, oh, crikey, this is a breaking story. It's terrible. Now, I'm going to tell you my view on it, first of all, this time, Pat. I think it was totally predictable. What Trump was looking, of course, just to tell people in case they haven't missed it, Trump got on the phone and was recorded on the phone to the chief election official or whatever in Georgia and told him, what I need is 11,478 votes. Because
I want you to find them.
Yeah, and I lost the election. It's not fair. I didn't lose the election. I won it, and it's not fair. And I want you to get this. Now, the CNN was putting that forward as being shocking, and people were stunned by it, and all sorts of people coming on saying how awful it was. I agree it's awful, but it's totally predictable. And I actually don't think, I really don't, certainly of the 70 million people who voted for him, I don't think there'll be 5 will be upset by that. After all, 70 million people heard and were given plenty of time to digest his famous grab them by the pussy remarks. And I mean, there must have been about, 35 million women who voted for Trump. And then another 35 million men. Despite the fact that's what he said, I mean, to be honest with you, I would have expected him. He's been saying from the beginning, even before the results came in, he was saying this election is rigged. So of course he's going to explore every avenue to try to find ways to back that up. And here he is now. This is just one example. He's now leaning. He didn't say, I'll come around and bash your head or anything to this guy. He just lent on him to produce these votes. But sure, that's what you would expect, really, no?
But Jude, what's more worrying is his enablers. Senator Ted Cruz down in Texas is apparently coming with 12 or 13 more other senators to try and block the votes for Joe Biden.
Is that lying? Is that lying, Ted?
That's lying, Ted Cruz, who Trump accused his father of being involved in the assassination of Kennedy, and I think made some remarks about his wife. But Ted is now one of his lackeys. But the thing about it is, it's unbelievable that Jude, in any other country, I think what's going on in America would be regarded as sedition. They are undermining the very, very foundations of the state. Trump basically said, Jude, if that phone call hadn't come out, basically Trump had that guy found 11,497 votes, and suddenly the election was suddenly in chaos again. And you hadn't been aware of that Trump had lent on him. The only reason we know about it is somebody obviously recorded that conversation and said, we're getting that out on the air before Trump. And Trump was trying to I listened to some of that tape. He was clearly trying to intimidate the guy into finding 11,478 votes.
But I mean, even that's delusional, because even the guy had found it, and even he had been able to say, despite all the reports, which twice, 2 investigations into Georgia already, and both found no. I think there was something like 2 examples of votes.
Two votes were changed. 2 votes were changed.
So it really wouldn't have got him anywhere, even he had been successful in.
I think Jude, what he was trying to do then, it would have cast aspersions and but the rest of the results. We found it down in Georgia, so it went on other places too. What he's trying to do is, I think what it is psychologically, Trump can't deal with the fact that he lost the election. And he's trying, as pride can't deal with it, and he's Jude, I remember reading years, some time ago, some wee fella got a lift in his car, and Trump basically boasted to him, no matter what you have to do, you always have to be the winner. And he said to the wee fella, your father is a loser because he didn't. And he basically, no matter what he done in life, he had to be the top dog, and he can't face the fact that he's been rejected.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, this is unfair to Roy Keane, but I suppose Roy Keane did say, show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser. So maybe Trump has heard that one and he's determined not to be a good loser.
Yeah, there's certain people who just can't take losing. That mentality.
His whole thing was based on being a triumphant person, and if you knock that prop out from underneath him, he's obviously going to be unhappy. But Pat, there was another thing came out yesterday which caught my eye, and that was that I think it was 10 former attorneys general or attorney generals of the US came out in a joint letter and said that the military cannot be involved in claims of electoral fraud. That seems to me to be saying that they're making it clear that Trump can't use the military as he used the military. Remember that famous photo shoot?
Cleared the streets.
I think they're getting their retaliation in first, as they say, and making it clear that this will not be tolerated. Incidentally, 2 of those former attorneys general were appointed by Trump himself. So there's,
Yeah.
I think the establishment and the sort of half-adult people in the States are not going to wear any fancy stuff that Trump may be calling. And he's apparently, is it tomorrow he's having some
Yeah.
Proud Boy demonstration in
Yeah.
Washington? Well, my view is this, that the more of that happens, the more firmly he will definitely lose. I don't
Aye.
see that that's going to do any good. I think it's going to fix in the mind of people, this guy is nuts. And they're
Aye.
going to be
Well, Jude, let's be honest. Let's call them Proud Boys by their real name, the Ku Klux Klan, because that's what they are. You know,
Yeah.
so he's holding a Ku Klux Klan rally. That's really what he's holding. By the way, Jude, you said something there just struck a chord with me. See this whole thing about these people who, no matter what Trump does, these 70 million, which is unbelievable. Like Saturday Night Live, I watched it over Christmas. They did a compilation show, and they showed all the things that Trump did over, the pussy remark about has contempt for the guy with the handicap, as some of us taking kids and putting them in cages. They did all the things, shithole countries. So I could keep going, but anyway, and it sort of, and they made the point. 70 million people still voted for it. So right, let's move on. See this whole thing about this virus. I've nearly lost the rag to it. It was the number of people who buy this theory that it's a conspiracy theory, and it's Bill Gates is out to get everyone, and it's George Soros, and it's all a big, and if you take this vaccine, it'll be mind control and all this. And you go, good merciful Jesus! If you looked at Devon, is anyone seriously thinking the Russians are going to buy this? Like the Brits had 800 years in Ireland and they couldn't control us. So I don't see how a vaccine's going to do it. So they get real.
Yeah, well, I suppose you're going back to that question of the virus again. My interest at the moment would be what's going to happen this week, because there's going to be that election of those two U.S. senators in Georgia. Isn't it Georgia? Yeah.
Yeah,
and, they say that the Republicans will need to win one to have a majority. If the Democratic Party wins two, they'll be 50-50, but Kamala Harris will have the deciding vote. But it's hard to know. I think most people are saying that there's a chance that the Democratic Party will get one of those seats. But they're saying there's no chance that they'll get both, which reinforces the point you were saying. No matter what that guy Trump does, there are people who will cling on to him and will be do what he wants and put their X against his candidate.
Right, Jude, we'll probably finish this now, but years ago, in my older life, when I was a newspaper guy, I remember I was during the Obama, and I met this guy who was a newspaper man from, I think it was Boston. And we were out for dinner. I was 4 or 5 of us, and believe it or not, in Letterkenny. And anyway, during the course of the conversation, the guy, I couldn't believe how vitriolic he was towards Obama. And it turned out afterwards, and I didn't realize at the time, because this was an articulate, engaging sort of guy. He was just a bloody racist. That's all he was. He couldn't take the fact that a black man was in the White House, and he had a real problem with it. And I think there's a lot of old Americans, baby boomer generation. This boy was Irish American, went to a good college and got himself a good career and all the rest of it. But his attitude was, and I presume the 70 million, it's a dying kick of the old white, people who simply can't take the fact that, hey, the demographics are changing around them.
Well, I would agree with that. But they're not actually being asked. This thing about electing Obama, and therefore a black man, I don't think that's a sign that the people of the United States are not racist, or an element of racism among most of them. And I'd include Democrats in that as well as Republicans. And I'd say the same thing about Irish people and English people. I mean, my niece is married to a guy from Ghana, I think it is, and he's a barrister, and he, a good job. Educated guy, perfect English and all the rest. He says the legal profession and English life generally, from top to bottom, is racist. It'll emerge in different forms, but it's completely there. And I think the same is true of Ireland. It's a terrible thing to say, but it is true. So while the Americans could tolerate and pat themselves on the back for having elected a black man as their president, they're not going to go and see to the situation where all these black people are in poverty. They have a huge representation in terms of the prison population, all the discrimination that is part of daily life and that keeps them in their place. That has never been addressed. It really hasn't.
Jude, I would say the simple test would, if your son came home with a black girl and you're an American, I bet you would not be happy with it. You'd be sort of thinking, what will the neighbors say?
Well, I'll tell you, we'll leave that topic now and wind up fairly soon. But I think if there's one thing that is even stronger than racism, I think racism is very deeply rooted in all of us, to a greater or less extent. The one thing that trumps it, if you pardon the word, is class. So which would you rather have? Say your daughter brings home a black man and she says, Dad, I want you to meet Charlie here. He's a billionaire and he's a professor in Harvard as well. How would you be with that? On the other hand, if she came home with a white guy and says, Dad, I want to introduce you to Joe, and Joe, he cleans the toilets down there in downtown. So class, you see, I think is...
that's a fair point. I'd say 9 out of 10 people, I'll go for the black billionaire.
I think so. They'd rather have a white billionaire. But
failing that,
settle with that. Okay, now that's a topic to come back to again. I think that's
that's a very good point you've raised there, Dr. Collins. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Thank you. Okay, you, Pat, I asked about the best moment. You were suggesting you're looking back at the best moment of 2020. You tell me yours first. You show me yours and I'll show you mine.
There's a conversation. But Jude, I think the best one for me, it's the stupidest one you're going to ever see when the lockdown ended, being able to get in the car and go for drives. That for me was, because COVID and Brexit, I remember that round about March, I was out for a walk one day and this guy who I didn't know, he and his wife were walking past me. He just turned around and he said, don't you miss Brexit? It was the best remark it was made to me all year because it was so funny. Because all anybody was talking about then was COVID. But no, Jude, was lovely. One of the nice, and by the way, I started going off. Me and my dear wife Rosie, we went off. We were going places like we'd go on maybe to West Donegal or South Donegal, and we'd see a road. Jude, we hadn't a clue where. So we'd go down a side road, up a mountain road, cross sort of a wee bridge, and we got lost. Many's a day we got lost. We hadn't a clue where we were. And we were, and all I did, Jude, was made sure there was plenty of fuel in the tank, and we just drove around. And they were beautiful days. And see if the sun was shining, it was like, hey, there is a God. I remember sitting thinking, this is beautiful. Now, that was the nicest thing. And of course, my year ended. You mentioned it earlier on. We had another wee grandson, or granddaughter, sorry. And that was a nice way to end a shit year. And pardon the use of the word, whatever.
Very good. That's nice.
What about you?
Well, funny, I was trying to think of it, and I was going to say I really didn't have any highs. I suppose I'd say 3 things. One is, one of the things I liked very much, it wasn't a moment, it was a realization, a gradual realization that I really didn't mind lockdown,
Yeah.
And
you're a natural hermit, Collins.
Well, I'm pleased that I'm able to do without the Vanity Fair out there. But at the same time, I'm worried about myself, But that's in general. One of the things is similar to something you said there today, one other day. I do a Zoom meeting with my granddaughter in England, a 6-year-old, every Wednesday now, and I read her a story before she goes to bed on Zoom, and it's very, very enjoyable. But anyway, she said the other night, the last Wednesday, she said, she calls me Shanaher. She says, "Oh, Shanaher, you are funny." She said, "You are like me. You have a sense of humor." And I don't know what. I just it touched me in a way that's just inexplicable. It just goes
Exactly.
right
I
into my
agree with, I
heart,
agree with you totally.
into my heart. And I
By the
know
way, I love the
that
fact that a wee girl with an English accent is using an Irish
yeah,
expression. Shana,
yeah,
grandfather. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But if you ask me what politically was the best moment, there was no doubt in my mind whatsoever, and that was as the general election results for the South came in last, was it February? Oh,
Aye,
when
so,
Sinn Féin, you see, Sinn Féin, and was it the Westminster election? Certainly the local elections, was it Westminster was held at the same time? Or
I
I
can't
can't
remember,
remember
Jude,
now, but
because
it was
don't
both
put me saying it.
locally and in Westminster, or else, yeah, it must be Westminster.
Aye,
Uh, the Sinn Féin did very badly. They halved their count. Their
aye,
number of councillors was halved. They really looked to be on the way out. And
aye,
I'm very sorry about that, because I certainly, whatever there was details about the Sinn Féin program, I wouldn't be totally happy about. But overall, I think they're the only political party in Ireland that's serious about Irish reunification.
yeah,
And to hear the results coming in, just one after the other, after the
aye,
other, after the other.
aye.
Oh, I just thought it was glorious, with just that wee kernel of sadness that they hadn't more bloody seats. Or
No, yeah, by the way,
more.
Jude, I think the first set of elections sort of misled them. They thought the base wasn't there and sort of they miscalculated, and when it came to the general election, and they hadn't enough. Like the two guys in Donegal, Pierce Doherty had nearly had a treble quota, and Patrick McLaughlin, the two of them were in on the first count. In fact, they could easily have taken in a third, no bother. But the previous election, they had run three candidates and lost a seat. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah. So for me, that was a glorious moment, and I'm not ashamed about that, because, as I say, any other party in Ireland is shuffling its feet and making vague remarks and talking about a shared island and stuff. And Sinn Féin makes no bones about it. They want a reunited Ireland. And I mean, when you think about it, any country that for
yeah,
100 years has been divided against its will,
yeah.
it seems to be crazy that any party wouldn't make that something very, very near the top, and wouldn't be talking about of their agenda and be talking about it on a continual basis.
Yeah. I always think, due to the shared island thing, it's like a big glossy double-decker bus, and the people put it in about, it needs 50 gallons, but they put in about 10 to ensure that somewhere down the road it has to park up.
And
Yeah.
send for reinforcements.
Uh,
Okay, Pat, we'll leave it at that, will we?
okay, Jude.
Thank you very much. A happy New Year,
Thanks, Jude.
Peter.
Happy New Year to you and
Okay.
to all your family.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thanks very much.